Looking for spicy off-meta MTG Standard decks? Well, in today's video, we are going to cover a bunch of best of one decks and a bunch of best of three decks that folks have got into Mythic with that are a little bit outside of the norm in terms of what's being played. So we're getting this information from Untapped GG, companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client. If you want to get started with Untapped, link is in the video description. I will paste all these deck lists as well in terms of easily importable. Normally what we do on the channel is like a metagame breakdown tier list of the highest win rate decks, but today's focus is going to be just on individual decks. So we're not going to, like in best of one, include the mono red Rakdos aggro decks, like your kind of go-to stock lists in terms of what's being played. We're going to be focusing on kind of more unusual decks, and then the same thing for best of three as well. So I'll indicate in the video description if it's a best of one or best of three deck, but let's jump in, folks. And these are all community decks, so we will shout out the user themselves. So Raging Clue went 101 and 66 overall with this list. Nice little climb up. And we're going to take a look at the deck. So this is, I'll show the curve. It's a little bit odd right now, Untapped, with just highlighting the decks themselves, but we have a version of Temur control. So we've had variants of like ramp decks before with Temur. This is kind of a doppelgang deck. It's basically consisting of Ancient Cornucopia, Realm Breaker as kind of ramp pieces, up the Beanstalk for card advantage. Roxanne can also be used as ramp and removal. Ill-Time Explosion as a sweeper. Then just a ton of removal in the deck. Into the Flood Maw as a bounce, Shock, Abrade, Fires of Victory, Terra Sunder, Brotherhood's End. As I mentioned, the Ill-Timed Explosion. Hornlock Whale is also going to be a kind of removal option as well. We have Myrna, where I don't even know what this does. So 3 mana, 2/4. At the beginning of your first combat phase, you add a red or green for each raccoon you control. Whenever you expend 4, you gain 3 life. Whenever you expend 8, exile the top 2 cards of your library and get to play those cards. So kind of rewarding you for naturally doing your thing. You got some Bonnie Pauls on the top end, Hugs for card advantage, and then you'll notice a single Invasion of Arcavius. This allows you to tutor in best of one for a sideboard, which gives you an option for hand hate, doppelgang counters, kind of big mana sinks, outrageous robbery, Step Between World for card advantage, Season of Weaving, card draw, basically 6 mana draw 5 if you want. You can make copies or kind of bounce each non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand, kind of reset the board. Titania's Command has a lot of utility in terms of life gain, creatures, stuff of that nature. So interesting kind of Temur Ramp deck there. We then go to Dr. Burgess, went 51-42, and this is a Rakdos joins up Reanimator deck. So this deck here, again, just kind of looking at the curve, you're using various kind of self-mill and loot effects. So you get like Treasure from Freebooter, Bitter Reunion can put cards in your graveyard, Brass can put stuff in your graveyard. You're using Rakdos Joins Up as a reanimation effect. Itali, Atraxa, Alcalazots, Shieldred, all legendaries. Flesh Gorger can fill the void of kind of the in-between. You are playing a number of Go for the Throats and Bitter Triumphs. Bitter Triumph in this deck can be used to kind of discard some of your effects. You also have Soul Coil Viper, black, and you could sacrifice it, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So it's another way to have a reanimation effect that can work in the deck itself. One thing you might want cut downs, maybe trim on some of these, just to make you a little bit leaner. You don't have many turn 1 plays and just kind of answering. You're going to win the big things. You just want to kind of stay alive. Rakdos Joins Up also deals damage when your creature dies if it's a legendary, so like Atraxa, Itali, any of those. On the way out, they would also deal some damage. Then we have from Glarg 8652 record, and this is Affinity. So Simulacrum Synthesizer deck. So this deck is looking to play artifacts that are 3 CMC or more, so it's built in a blue-white control deck. So you have things like Thran Spider, Mightstone, Meekstone, Steel Seraph on its non-prototype mode, but the prototype mode also just can help make big tokens with the Synthesizer, give them flying, Braided Net as a control piece. So Braided Net, you have the ability to tap things down. Get Lost, Soul Partitions, 3 Steps Ahead, Lockdowns for all the aggressive decks. You're playing a lot of colorless stuff, so you can kind of accommodate Murex, Fable Passage mixed into there as well. And then like Restless Anchorage can be another win condition. So we're going to go to best of 3. Best of 3's got like a lot of Golgari mid-range, some various mono black discards, the kind of mono reddish aggro styles, some domains, some bats mixed into there. So the first deck here, it's a deck we've seen a bit in best of 1, but we haven't really seen it much in best of 3, and that is Rabbits. So this is Makaya Lalindes. They went 23 and 11 in best of 3. So kind of pulling up the deck list. Just a lot of aggressively slanted rabbits. Valley Quest Caller is a lord for your rats, lets you kind of scry with more coming into play. You have Burrow Guard Mentor and Bunny Regal Corn, both get bigger based on the number of creatures. But Regal Bunnicorn gets bigger, including non-creatures, so like your talents or your cases. But it doesn't have trample naturally. The Burrow Guard Mentor is only creatures, but does have trample. So it's kind of the trade-off there. Paw Patch is going to give you multiple bodies, and then if they get targeted, you get to put counters on things. Season Warren Guard is basically a 1-mana 3/2 in this deck most of the time based on tokens attacking in. Valley Might Caller gets bigger when rabbits come into play. So you actually have like 2 different 1-mana tramplers, which is kind of cool. Innkeeper's Talent could throw counters on things. Get Lost in case of Gateway Express for removal. Phineas could put counters and could potentially draw you cards. Up to it is 3 bodies for 3 mana. That plays well into kind of this strategy. Warren War Leader can be Offspring, so you make a copy, or just a 4/4 for 4 whenever you attack. Notably, not Warren War Leader itself. You get to either create a rabbit that's tapped and attacking, or attacking creatures you control get +1/1. Knight Aaron Evios for some card advantage. Since you're mainly rabbits, you can take advantage of the caverns, and then you have kind of the villages in here for card advantage. Restless Prairie as well. So you're a little soft to obviously Sunfall in these types of decks, but you have ways like you're trying to leverage the, where did it go? Oh, there's no evasions in the sideboard. So when you're playing this deck, just kind of be mindful to not overcommit into it. Surge of Salvation for red and black removal, Case is more removal, Innkeeper for kind of making big things, Calamity Wake if in case of any graveyards, Get Lost as removal, Invasion. I might play like an additional Invasion, just you want to try to beat Sunfalls. Ajani for like heavy removal along with Elspeth, so it just gives you something outside of your creatures always are getting swept up, gives you another angle attack. And then for heavy discard, you have Absence Bailoff. They go to Liliana, you get a 4/4, a tale as old as Jund. Then we have Mono Red. So this is a list that won a large Japanese tournament, 111 people last weekend. I featured a video of it on my channel the other day, and you're saying, but Joe, you said no Mono Red. But this isn't your mama's Mono Red. This is Mono Red Koth mid-range. So this curve is not your traditional Mono Red curve. It's a little odd when you kind of look at it, but it plays kind of interesting. So you have Charming Scoundrel and Grabby Giant that can both make you a treasure on 2 that let you accelerate into Koth or Sunspine Links early. Generally, Koth is kind of the way you want to go. You have aggressive plans with the Hired Claw, which can ping and put counters on as a mana sink. Swift Spears, Shocks, Lightning Strikes kind of mixed in. A lot of removal in this deck. Scorching Shot, Obliterating Bolt, full 4 Forge main. So you're kind of playing like this mid-rangey control deck. You have Fountain Port for some utility, Mishra's Foundries as well. In my list, so I played pretty much card for card. The only difference I did was I swapped the Mishra's Foundries out for 2 Myrex and 2 Mountains. I don't love playing 6 colorless lands in a deck that has so many kind of 1-drop red pips, or even like Scorching Shot, double red type thing. As well, like I found at times I emblem Koth, but you want to play Mountains, so you're not even like using the utility lands. Sideboard is just a bunch of removal. The one card I didn't like see too much benefit of playing is Emberheart Challenger. You're not playing a lot of things that would trigger the Valiant, and oftentimes people were boarding as though we were mono red to naturally bring in more low to the cost sweepers. So it just felt like at odds in terms of what you're kind of bringing in. I do like the plan to board into a mid-range control deck. You have Brotherhood's End as sweepers, more Koths and Sunspine Links and Jayas, just kind of shifting up into like a big red kind of control deck, which was kind of interesting. The Ember Hearts, I think either you main board them or you don't play them at all. Just kind of the way I felt about the deck, but I typically like to play a little bit more aggressive. Then we have Streamer Hamhawk 42. They were playing today a Insidious Roots deck. They went 28 and 12 into Mythic. And this deck here is looking to use Insidious Roots to remove cards from your graveyard to get value. One of the new cards we got from the set, we actually got quite a few cards. So we have Bonecash Overseer, 1 mana, 1/1, pay a life, draw a card, activate only if 3 or more cards left your graveyard this turn. So you have ways with the Scavenge ability to enable that. So with Osteomancer Adept, 2 mana, 2/2 Death Touch, until the end of turn, you may cast creature spells from your graveyard by foraging. In addition to their cast cost, they have a finality counter when they come in. So you forage 3, and then that enables the Bonecash Overseer to draw you cards. Cards leaving your graveyard trigger Insidious Roots, so you get creature tokens. Those creature tokens with Tyvar can have haste, so you kind of churn through your deck by having Snarling Gorehound out to surveil cards into your graveyard, and it's kind of an engine there. Cash Grab as a way to kind of mill, find permanents, put cards in your graveyard. Honest Rustines, a way to kind of recycle creatures and kind of go from there. The Voldaren Thrillseeker, while you don't have red mana in the deck, you could produce red mana through Insidious Roots when you kind of combo out. And then you can just kind of fling the creatures at your opponent if you need to. Harvester of Misery can be used as removal against your opponent's stuff, and then can be brought back if needed. Sideboards, cut downs, Haywire Mites for like temporary lockdowns, Soul Cauldron for graveyard hate, and you can kind of add those abilities. Anoint with Affliction as removal, Skyfisher Spider for bigger things, Deadly Cover Up as a sweeper, and then more Harvester of Miseries against like the low to the ground decks. We then go to Ijawutz of some person's name. You can see it on the screen there. 19 and 6, and this is with a Orzhov Pixie Rottenmouth Viper deck. So this deck here, again, just kind of looking at the hover. You're using the discard package, Bandit's Talent, Liliana's in there, a lot of cheap permanent style effects, Hopeless Nightmare, Tithing Blade, things that have an effect but leave something behind. Those can be rebought with Nurturing Pixie. Novice Inspector makes 2 bodies, so you can sacrifice them to the Rottenmouth Viper, which will allow you, when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you put a blight counter on it, then for each blight account, each opponent loses 4 life, or sacrifices a non-land permanent, or discards a card. So kind of a Punisher style effect. Shelly's in here. Thoughtstalk Warlock is another way to eat away at your opponent's hand. So you're like stripping their hand and then trying to Rottenmouth for value. You have some utility lands within the Restless Fortress and Fountain Port as well. Graveyard Hate in Rest in Peace, which is Vanity, can be used as removal and just provide a bunch of different. You can get the Vanity, a food token, and a Wicked Roll, all things that can be sacrificed. Lauren for Artifact Enchantment Hate, the End for removal. Beza is kind of a mid-range or even against aggressive decks. I've found this deck quite effective against aggressive. This card quite effective against aggressive decks. Hostile Negotiator for the mid-range decks. You have Elish Norn for Domain, anything with heavy ETBs, and Gix Command as a sweeper. And then lastly, we have Glarg. So Velos went 40 and 20 with a Sultai Glarg list. So this one is looking to play big butts. So Glarg, where are you, my boy Glarg? Death Touch, 3 mana, 2/4. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play lands and cast spells with mana value 4 or more from the top of your library, and you could surveil 2 with it. So this deck's got some ramp and Armor Scrap Gorger, Clifftop Lookout can put lands into play. You have Sentinel, the Nameless City in here. Kellen can help you investigate early, play an extra land, and then is another 4-drop. Sheoldred's in here, both Sheoldred Apocalypse and Sheoldred. A Silverback Elder, and you'll notice a lot of the creatures here have a bigger toughness than power. That's because of Fecund Green Shell, 5 mana, 4/6 reach. As long as you control 10 or more lands, creatures you control get +2/2. And then whenever it or another creature you control with toughness greater than its power enters, so it's the top card of your library. If it's land, put it into play. Otherwise, you put it into your hand. So it's kind of virtual card advantage. Virtues, Gix Command, all kind of mixed in. Hand Hate with Duress, Edict for removal, Negates for counters, Terra Sunders, Flexible removal, Choke and Miasma for the go wide decks, and then Obstinate Baloth for the heavy discard decks. So that's it. A bunch of kind of off the beaten path decks showing that you don't necessarily need to play Domain or Mono Red to reach Mythic. You can play decks that you like, just kind of become efficient with them or go on a nice winning streak and kind of go from there. But if you have any other cool decks, drop a list in the video comments and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.